Thank you for joining me for the Daily Bread Bible study. We have a full one here today for day 45, Numbers chapters 16 through 18. And it's full with a lot of narrative as well too. It is dramatic here in Numbers 16 as the chosen people of God were becoming jealous of who God had chosen to lead them. This is called the revolt of Korah, Danath, and Abiram. And Danath and Abiram, two of the Reubenites, firstborn inheritance that was not given there to the first and oldest tribe. And then as well as Korah, who was a Levite of the tribe of Levi. And they were, in some sense, an odd couple of people, an odd few people to come to Aaron and Moses and before the 250 well-known men. This shows that the conflict is not just within one house, but the desire to revolt against God is across all of the 12 ancestral tribes. And anyone, even Miriam and Aaron, can get caught up in the rebelling. So they said to one another in Numbers 14:4, "Let us choose a captain and go back to Egypt." Now, what are the complaints of the rebels, Danath and Abiram? Well, they say that you have gone too far in verse 3. All the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them. So why then do you exalt yourselves above the assembly of the Lord? They are worried about them lording it over them, just kind of in the way that Pharaoh did. But do they really remember the slavery in Egypt? And is that truly better than the wilderness in their eyes? They also, in Numbers chapter 16, verse 14, they complain about no inheritance of fields or vineyards, which is something that they are getting impatient about. In Moses' response, he says, "You Levites have gone too far," in verse 7. And Moses speaks to the Levites in verse 10, "God has allowed you to approach him and all your brother Levites with you, yet you seek the priesthood as well." Just a reminder, too, that the sons of Aaron are the priests, and they are the ones deemed to offer up the sacrifices as priests. Now, the Levites, they just kind of help prepare the rituals, though they don't directly perform them, especially the atonement-making sacrifices. Is it that they want the stage, want attention? Well, in Numbers chapter 18, verse 3, "They shall perform duties for you and for the whole tent, but they must not approach either the utensils of the sanctuary or the altar, otherwise both they and you will die." So Moses' proposition is to let God decide. Be present tomorrow before the Lord, it says in verse 16 of chapter 16. And the idea is to do this. In verse 6, to take censers, Korah and your company, and tomorrow put fire in them, and lay incense on them before the Lord. And the man whom the Lord chooses shall be the Holy One. They say that they will not come up, which is interesting because they don't want to be a part of it. They're hesitant to do what Moses had said. Now the question is, why are they so eager to go to Moses, but so hesitant to go before the Lord? In Numbers 16, verse 20, the Lord responds, "Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, 'Separate yourself from this congregation, so that I may consume them in a moment.'" God is not having any of this. God is wrathful of all the congregation on behalf of the rebels. It is stated that the fire burns against them. Moses, he says, "Turn away or you will all be swept away for their sins." In Numbers 16, verse 28, Moses is trying to warn people In verse 30, if the Lord creates something new and the ground opens up its mouth and swallows them up with all that belongs to them, and they go down to alive into Sheol, well then you shall know that these men have despised the Lord. And it says that because of Moses' words, the Lord made the earth swallow up Danath, Abiram, and all the families, in which 250 are consumed and fall. Now, the censers were hallowed. There in Numbers 16, verse 38, it says, these censers are these of these sinners have become holy at the cost of their lives. So these holy objects are even sanctified through their death and what they've learned that God does not accept any dysfunction. So in Numbers 16, verse 40, what the lesson that's learned says, no outsider who is not of the descendants of Aaron shall approach to offer incense before the Lord. And the sons of Aaron alone shall be priests and high priests. You and your sons alone shall bear responsibility for offenses connected with the priesthood, as it says in Numbers chapter 18, verse 1. Continuing on in chapter 16 of Numbers, in verse 41, on the next day, however, the whole congregation of the Israelites rebelled against Moses and against Aaron, saying, you have killed the people of the Lord. The people see it as Moses and Aaron causing these things to happen instead of God choosing to act. Moses and Aaron, in a lot of ways, are not responsible for God's actions. Moses often tries to stop God from acting negatively against God's chosen people. It's Moses and Aaron who cannot choose what God will get angry over, but they can mediate conflict between God and the people. So there is all sorts of dysfunction directed at Moses and Aaron. In Numbers 17, there's the budding of Aaron's rod. As the Lord wants to make another example, here he has chosen Aaron and his descendants for the special priestly functions. They are invited to take 12 staffs from the heads of the ancestral tribes, and they add Aaron's staff. And then in verse 5 of Numbers 17, and the staff of the man whom I choose shall sprout. Thus I will put a stop to the complaints of the Israelites that they continually make against you. The anxious Israelites say in verse 13, everyone who approaches the tabernacle of the Lord will die. Or that's what's said to the anxious Israelites. Moving on to Numbers 18, there's the clarifying the roles of the sons of Aaron, the Levites, and the rest of the congregation. In Numbers 18, verse 7, but you and your sons with you shall diligently perform your priestly duties in all that concern the altar and the area behind the curtain. And God lays out the perks, getting to be provided with everything except the best offerings, yet there's still no functional land allotment. In Numbers 18:29, out of all the gifts to you, you shall set apart every due offering to the Lord. The best of all of them is the part to be consecrated. And continuing on in Numbers 18, verse 30, say also to them, when you have set apart the best of it, then the rest shall be reckoned to the Levites as produce of the threshing floor and as produce of the winepress. And you may eat of it in any place, you and your households, for it is your payment for your service in the tent of meeting. So there is some sense of the community taking care of the priests for their functions and the gift of being able to have enough. Now, this abundance of food available for them is a sweet perk, but there's also a lack of a helpful perk. In Numbers 18, verse 20, then the Lord said to Aaron, you shall have no allotment in their land, nor shall you have any share among them. I am your share in your possession among the Israelites. To the Levites I have given every tithe of Israel for possession in return of the service from that which they perform, the service in the tent of the meeting. And from now on, the Israelites shall no longer approach the tent of meeting, or else they will incur guilt and die. So that is the priestly sons of Aaron set apart, and a reminder to listen to God and not question really the things that don't need to be questioned. Sure, we may wonder what God is up to, but at the same time, too, it's important to remember that God gifts people to be messengers, to be prophets, to speak to us, to function as priests, and we need to respect that God is working through each and every individual and to be open that they may in fact reveal God to us in new ways. So may we be open and invite the Holy Spirit to come through people and to be able to help guide us in our life.